Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Detour podcast, where we talk about all things related to the topic of unconventional success and upcomings. I'm your host, Gary Fan, a community college alumni with aspirations of becoming a world-changing business owner. This episode marks episode 2 within the first season of the podcast. Today, I'm joined with a very special guest, a current community college student, part-time worker, aspiring bubble tea business owner, and a dear friend of mine, Jordan Tran.
All right. Hey, what's up, guys? First of all, I'd like to say thanks, Gary, for inviting me to the podcast. It feels pretty cool to be on here. Currently, like Gary said, I'm a current community college student. I'm also a part-time worker. I'm a boba barista. I am also one day my dream is to open up a cafe just so that people can enjoy themselves, either through work or just chilling with friends.
Yeah. Do you mind telling the audience right now or the listeners what you're majoring in college and a little bit about that dream of yours of becoming a boba barista or opening up your own chain one day?
Yeah, for sure. So right now I am I'm a business major. Currently just taking the prerequisites right now. And in terms of the whole boba cafe thing, when I was little, I always leaned towards that just because, since we're in SoCal, it's a big part of our culture. We would always hang out with friends, and the first thing we would think of is, hey, let's go grab some boba,
yeah.
right? I enjoy a lot of that during my childhood. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's such a big part of my life where even though when there's ups and downs of life, right, I'm struggling with something, boba was always there to help relax or ease my my stress and stuff like that. And for me, I would also study at cafes too, and doing all that stuff, I really enjoy that time. And for me, I want to be able to open up a place or create a place where people can just come in. They can either study, have fun, right?
Yeah.
Be productive. But yeah, it's pretty much my overall reasoning for opening one.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds awesome. But before we dive into, I guess, more of your boba ventures, do you mind telling us, or I remember you told me back a few years ago when we were still in high school, or actually when you decided to attend community college, you were not originally a community college student and you're actually a CSU student. And do you mind telling the viewers a little bit about your experience on dropping out and going to CC instead of pursuing what you already had, a 4-year institution in your hands? Why did you do that?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, yeah, it's true. I used to attend Cal State Long Beach. And going through high school, there was always this culture or this mentality where everyone was trying to really get accepted into a 4-year college. Mm-hmm. And for me, I didn't really think about it. It was more of just being pressured by the environment around me, where I would just push myself just to get into any 4-year college. And in terms of Cal State Long Beach, first of all, I just want to say that the school is great. It's one of the biggest known schools out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you get accepted, take the opportunity. And really experience it. But for me, specifically, the reason why I decided to drop out of Long Beach is because going back to the high school story, I didn't really think about if I liked the school or not. I didn't do my research. I kind of just thought everyone was just saying how great of a school it is, right? Mm-hmm. And because if I don't take that opportunity now, I might never have it again.
Yeah.
And that's why I took that opportunity. So,
yeah.
Going through around the first semester, because I never really thought about how much I liked it. Mm-hmm. It kind of just felt off just going through classes there. I tried really hard to like the environment and everything, and talking to people, going through classes and stuff like that. But it just ended up not really working out,
Yeah.
It just felt like I didn't belong there.
Yeah. Real quick before you continue, do you mind telling us what your major was and your switch between that major and what you're majoring in now?
Yeah, well, the switch is actually pretty funny. It's kind of all over the place, but we'll just get into it right now. So at first, I started as a art major, which
Let's
is
go.
yeah, because back then, in high school I was like drawing and stuff, and I really enjoyed it, and my dream was to be like an animator, right?
Yeah,
Because like it's just
I remember that.
so cool, I love anime. For all you anime watchers out there, yeah, I love the anime, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to try to get into that major, see how it is, and really stand out,
Yeah.
But as I was doing it, like because drawing and art was kind of more of a hobby side, I kind of just like taking classes, being forced to do it. It kind of just took the love away from it,
Yeah.
And like drawing classes are pretty difficult, and homework for drawing classes are kind of insane. Like 3 hours of homework,
Yeah.
that's really hard. But yeah, and then I didn't like the classes, so I switched over. Right, I switched over to psychology, and for psychology, I kind of just like thought of it as it's one of the things I enjoyed in high school. So I just use it as like a filler for now, as I'm still figuring things out. So I didn't really take that much classes for psychology. It was just more of like the GEs.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much like my transition through majors.
How did you get from there to what you are now with business? Like, what made you make that like switch to like I'm gonna be like a business major now? I mean, like obviously like wanting to open like a boba shop like played into factor, but what's like that mindset behind like going into a business major?
Yeah, for sure. So, before I get into that, just say, so I did transfer to community college, right? The process was, it wasn't that difficult, but it's just more like it kind of required a lot of really communicating between schools, and switching over to community college was definitely a lot easier, and signing up for classes as well. Now going back to like the whole reason why I chose the business major is because at first, I thought it was a very versatile type of major. I feel like I could have done a lot with it, or I can expand from that. And of course, like what really motivated it was the whole like small business of the boba cafe. So it's like that's what really drove me to start that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Do you mind telling us a little bit about? So you already have like some experience with like being at a CSU and already a little bit of experience being at a CC as well. How is the environment between like those two like environments? Like is it more like cutthroat at one, like more rushed and a little laid back in comparison to each other? Like how is that?
Yeah, for sure. So, of course, there's a big difference in my opinion and through my experiences on how like the environments are. Being in a CSU, you feel more, in my opinion, or any 4-year college. I feel like you're more pressured to look for something, look for that specific major, like really going into it. And while I was taking these classes, like I felt like I was rushed to take like 15 units, going out that typical 4-year route, and not really like taking that time to really figure out what I like. And of course, there's you can always declare yourself as undeclared, right? But at the same time, like they're gonna have use like scheduled meetings with counselors, and they're gonna talk about your progress. And for that, like it just adds more pressure, because since you're always like talking to a counselor, I feel like it would add more, like again, that pressure to choose classes and make sure you're on track. Yeah, but switching over to community college, it's completely different atmosphere, because all of it is all dependent on you. And I feel like in a way it gives you a lot more freedom to try a lot of different things other than just focusing on school. And the thing about counselors is counselors are there as like more of a supporting, like it's like a resource. So if you need a counselor, then you can talk to them and learn more about the system. So you don't really have to, you're not forced to like talk to your counselor. You can choose to do your own research and take classes on your own if you plan to transfer or like get another degree. So in terms of that, like I think community college for me has been a lot easier, a lot smoother.
Yeah. Wow, that's definitely awesome to hear, especially for like us community college like folks out there, Like it's definitely hard, especially like if you're already at like a 4-year and like you're making that like leap in like dropping out, or like changing towards like community college and like switching that route entirely. I mean, do you regret any of that, or do you regret any of the decisions you made within like the past 2 years?
Honestly, yeah, there were times where I would have those thoughts, of regret, because being in like a 4 year college already, like I have a lot of things laid out for me already.
Yeah.
Like there's like that community there, and I could always like take a step out and really like talk to people there and really build up my connections. It's a lot easier there. Uh, but other than that, like and meeting friends for the first 2 years there, I feel like it depends on how you present yourself and how you really push yourself to get to know people. You can
Mm-hmm.
literally do it anywhere. So I don't really, uh, I guess, care too much about staying within that 4 year college to get to know people.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you can do the same thing while you're in community college. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. I mean, going off of like that like idea, do you think you would have done anything like differently instead of like regret? Like, would you have changed anything in terms of, like giving yourself like a bit more advice or like trying this, trying that, and stuff like that?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely had some advice for myself from back then, which is pretty much a lot of that time frame, within that
Yeah.
time. It's just there was a lot of hesitation and there's a lot of doubt, and for choosing to switch.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like if I were to give myself some advice, I would try to really push myself to make the decision, because all that time of like being hesitant, you could use that time to really explore,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things that I would give advice, right?
Yeah. Dang, that's awesome. I mean, your route is like very abnormal in the fact that, like the typical route for like a community college student is 2 years transfer and like you continue with your education at like a 4 year institution.
Yeah.
How is that like how is that like feeling of, staying at community college for like another year? Like, is it stressful? Is it like scary? Like, what's going through like your mind when you have an extra year added to like your education?
Yeah, for sure it is pretty scary. I had those thoughts before too, like especially when like being on social media and talking to my friends, like seeing how people are progressing through college. I
Mm-hmm.
do feel the need, like, oh, I'm falling behind.
Yeah.
But the more time I spent on really, focusing, like, for example, mental health and choosing the things I really want to do,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of just eased myself. Like, finding, like, all the activities I always want to do, starting them and really committing to them kind of really eased my fear, fear of being left behind or something like that.
Yeah. Dang. Just for context, what are some of the activities? I know you personally, I know you've been like working on like a few activities out there, but just for context, what activities have like really helped like boost that like morale and that like confidence in you?
Yeah. So most of that comes from, or not really most, but it can be like the smallest things, starting
Yeah.
like for example, it could be simple as for me personally, that's helped me a lot was gymming.
Yeah.
Working out. That like recently I just started for like 2 months now, just consistently trying to work out like 6 a.m. every day. Trying to wake up early, sleep early, trying to adapt that more of a healthier lifestyle, which really helps me with mental health as well. And also, trying to read some books, trying to just learn more about myself and what I want to do.
Yeah.
And also, like, because I'm giving more me time, right? It shows like I'm learning how to build boundaries,
Yeah.
which is like really important that people should start learning how to do sooner.
Yeah.
Especially like you gotta really know how important your time is,
Mm-hmm.
and balancing it between like your job, also your friends and your family.
Yeah.
And because realistically, you're not gonna have time for everyone. And
Yeah.
it's really important to establish like how much time you're giving to everyone else, so that you don't burn yourself out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Speaking of books, I actually have a present for you later. Like I got it from my trip, but
Oh,
that's
really?
that's
Oh,
a
appreciate
later
that.
story. But
Okay.
I have a little bookmark for you from my trip. So
Interesting.
yeah, I'll give that to you later. But
Cool.
in terms of what's it called, like mental health and like self like help in like this process of like your journey for like education wise, in community college and like CSU, how would you describe like that progression? How did you get to where you are now, where you're finding that consistency with like going to the gym and stuff? Because a lot of people have that barrier from like where they are now to where you are. What is that like breakage? How do you overcome that?
Yeah. So for me, I think that block, right,
Yeah.
is based on your expectations. You know, because at first, you have all these goals that you're writing out, and you really want to accomplish them. And but the problem is, if you set too high of expectations for you, like unrealistic expectations. Like I learned a lot of this from going through therapy and stuff like that. Like if you set these unrealistic expectations, you're gonna be really hard on yourself, and because you're so hard on yourself, it'll end up, making you want to quit and give up. So that's why for me, like what helped me progress through this is I started, very small, like small steps, and make sure that I complete those small steps like every single day.
Yeah.
Like for example, like the gym, right? Before, like like everyone else, we sleep at like 3
Yeah,
a.m., 4 a.m.
Demons,
That's
man.
the demons time. Yeah, but I sleep earlier, like an hour earlier every week. Like
Yeah.
consistently through the days, hour earlier. Working out, trying to push myself to wake up, have that alarm, right?
Yeah.
And like working out, make the workouts super simple. Or like a really cool thing to do too is like have someone there, like ask a friend, ask anyone to hold you accountable, like
Yeah.
be there to support you.
Yeah.
It's just like starting small, simple workouts, and then building up to like harder workouts, and eventually finding your own routine. So it's like it's a lot of setting up, like building small,
Yeah.
So that's like one example, right?
Yeah.
And another thing is, as you're progressing, make sure you really think about how much you progress. Like, be proud of all the small steps that you accomplished. That's really important as well.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing that really helped me push through.
Yeah. Would you say it's like small incremental steps that you follow like every day? Like walk us through, I guess, a day of yours, where you're going through that barrier. How do you like overcome that like barrier or that boundary that you're facing? Like do you have like very small goals, very realistic goals, like, oh, I'm going to what's it called, I'm going to take out the trash today, and then that leads to something else, and then do you kind of build momentum that way?
I guess for me, I kind of do it like that way. Yeah, like waking up, it's just like having that like that simple idea for me of, okay, I really want to take care of myself more. Like just having that's like the main thought, and that leads to like starting small steps. So for example, like waking up at like 5:30, right, and doing like my skincare routine.
Yeah.
Right, and that's like, okay, I'm taking care of myself. I'm doing something that will help me, and that starts with, and then that leads to the next step, which is, okay, let's go get changed. Could get in the car and then just drive to the gym.
Yeah.
And once I'm at the gym, just think of it as, I'm here to better myself.
Yeah.
I'm here to really push myself to be better, right? And I'm only working out for like an hour, hour and a half. It's not that long. It's not super hard. My workout routine is not to the point where like, I'm pushing myself to the limit,
Yeah.
It's just something that I'm slowly building up. And once I finish the workout, it's just, I go back to that thought, like, wow, I'm taking care of myself. I feel really good. Like, physically, I feel good. Mentally, my head's clear. But that's pretty much, like, how my gym routine starts. And then throughout the day, like, it could be small things like, oh, cleaning up my room, like, doing small things, like, folding some laundry or putting things into drawers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of things that I I want myself to look a certain way, in terms of like looking healthy. I want my room to be clean. Like it's just like building up that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's very, like, honestly, I'm super proud of you, like, being, like, your close friend. I've seen how far you've come, like, ever since, like, high school and stuff, so it's definitely awesome to see you, like, get to a point where, you have consistency with like your schedule, and like you're finding like these small things that like push through, and you're slowly building momentum, you know, and I see that. So not a lot of people are doing that right now, especially like our age, you know. It's like they're constantly like partying, you know, sleeping at like 3 a.m. and stuff like that. It's hard, you know, but it's like, what do you value more, you know? Do you value that instant gratification, or do you want that long-term
Yeah,
like
exactly.
goal,
The
right?
idea of long term versus short term.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that like I'm seeing like you do, you know, and I think that's definitely awesome. I'm super excited
I
for that.
appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
grind don't stop. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Yeah.
True. Well, moving on to the next thing, I wanted to talk about like some advice. Would you have any like advice for those that have gone through the same path as like you have, in terms of being in like a college right now, whether that be a 4 year like private university, or a Cal State University, or just like a UC in general, and having like those regrets or those thoughts of, you know, maybe this isn't like my school, you know? What advice would you give to those people that are considering dropping out, but they're very hesitant on doing so?
Yeah. So, in terms of that, of dropping out, for me, I'd say, it kind of just depends on you. But what I would say is, if it depends on how far like you feel like you don't belong in the school. Okay, if it's to the point where you just dread just driving to school every single day, you know, then I would say, you know, make the change, go to community college, you know, go an alternate route, right? And because the thing about community college is you can transfer to any school, so like there's really nothing like negative about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good. So if you really don't like where you are right now, and it really sucks for you, then just, you know, take that step. It's gonna feel uncomfortable for sure, because you're kind of just going against the norm of what you normally see, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's just, you know, it takes a lot of strength. You know, I feel like if once you do that for yourself and you make all these decisions for yourself, it'll help you build up like that sense of confidence later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But going to the other side, like if you're a little bit like 50-50, or maybe like 25% of not really liking where you are, I'd say stay a little bit longer, you know, like really try to absorb, like really push yourself, you know, to meet people. And maybe like you might meet like a really good friend group that will help you like go through school and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's all about like how you're feeling at the moment, and like how it's affecting you, you know, in your lifestyle and stuff like that.
Yeah. Damn, that's awesome. Well, going back to community college, I guess, in terms of like you talked about, there's not really this negative, like there's nothing wrong about going to community college, but society and schools paint this picture of this, you know, community college having like this negative like connotation and negative like experience to it. You know, if you're going to a community college, it's like you're doing something wrong with your life. But clearly, you know, speaking from experience and speaking from like other people's experiences, you know, people who have attended community college, like I feel like they're the ones that are thriving right now, you know. So what do you have to say in terms of that connotation, or that energy that's, you know, rallied towards like community colleges like now?
Yeah. So in terms of community college, you know, like I agree. Like in, you know, high school culture, it wasn't really looked like, you know, good upon. Like, people didn't really say that they were gonna go. They weren't proud, you know, of saying like they're gonna go to community college. Like everyone was just always talking. I remember high school, you know, everyone was talking about, oh yeah, I can't wait to get into like Fullerton, or like I can't go to UCI, like UCLA, right, Berkeley, like all these high 4 year schools, but there's no one talking about like, hey, I'm going to OCC, or I'm going to Golden West, right?
Very true.
So I get that, I agree with that. But for me, like in terms of like community college itself, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And like taking this route, you know, one is you save a lot of money, which is helps a lot, right?
Yeah.
You won't be that much into like in depth and stuff like that. But at the same time, like what I really appreciate, or grew to appreciate, for community college is just there's a variety of people, you know. You meet so many different people at community college, because anyone can go to community college, right? Like some classes, like of course, usually majority is around your age, right, or a little bit older, a little bit younger. But there's
Mm-hmm.
also some people who are like 30, some people 40, right?
Yeah.
And all these people have so much life experience, and once you really like get to know them, you learn so much more how like the world works, how like the world isn't just school, it's
Yeah.
like there's so many other things. And like learning from that, I feel like you'll be more well-rounded,
Mm-hmm.
like you won't overstress yourself or push yourself to graduate early,
Mm-hmm.
because honestly, like I'd say you should just take your time, really enjoy your life, while also thinking about what you want,
Mm-hmm.
because in community college there's no pressure.
Yeah.
It's all your own time,
Yeah, I agree.
and it's always there. And honestly, like you know, like I say again, enjoy your life. Really figure out what you're doing. Because for me personally, one of like my biggest like regret, or like I never want, like in
Mm-hmm.
terms of regretting later in the future, is uh, I don't want to regret graduating with a degree where, let's say I changed my mind and I had to go back to school again, and
Mm-hmm.
then I had to spend more money, more time,
Yeah.
So it's like really just take that time. You have so much, right? We're so young,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys, are pretty young too, like entering college or something like that, midway to college. I feel like, having that time to really discover yourself is extremely important. And yeah, I would just say, I don't like that.
Yeah, like I definitely agree. I want to touch back upon something that you mentioned of high schoolers not really like glorifying the fact that they're going to community college. You know,
Yeah.
everyone's like they're very restricted to their options in terms of what schools they got into while neglecting the fact that community college is always an option.
Yeah.
I remember in high school, like you mentioned, it's like, oh, I got into Fullerton, UCI, UCL, or not UCLA, because someone would have probably already attended if you're a high schooler, right? But the fact is, they only thought between those two options that they had. Going to one of them was the only option, basically.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's community college, and not a lot of people really turn to that path. So I just really wanted to touch upon that portion and how it's like not really glorified. It's
Yeah.
still something that's underrated in my opinion, and
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people like utilize it a lot, and obviously like we're coming to utilize it like now, which I definitely respect.
I completely agree,
Yeah.
because the thing is, uh, I didn't really attend it for that long for 4-year college, but I feel like once you, based on the experience of what I've heard from other people, is
Yeah.
like once you do join a 4-year college, right, you really, school is pretty much your life
Yeah.
at that point,
Yeah.
like you're going to study there,
Yeah.
meet friends there, you're gonna, maybe do work study, right?
Yeah.
You can also like people join clubs, frats, and all that stuff. That just becomes that typical college lifestyle.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like when you're in community college, you have that freedom where, oh, you can like try out things outside of school, like
Mhm.
maybe just get a job, really get deep into that job if you want to,
Mhm.
or you can like do anything like fun, like creative. Like it's just having that freedom of just doing whatever you want without really, seeing school as a priority. You know,
Mhm.
like as an extreme priority, of course. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. School is always important.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is, you just have more of that balance in your life where you can
Yeah.
try a lot of different things while also, it's not just a one linear like, path.
Yeah.
It's like more well-rounded.
Yeah, I definitely agree in terms of like time and stuff like that. Like at a community college, like dude, like I'm not trying to bag on like other schools and stuff like that, but it feels like for community college, it's like you have like all the time in the world, like to really find yourself, to explore, going back to what you were saying on, having the ability to try out new things and have like that balance in life. I think a lot of people can find that through community college, and taking the time to really find out what you want to do, who you want to become, saves so much more time in the long run, and in terms of like whether or not you want to switch your major in the future and stuff like that. I think really getting that grounded at community college and having that set for you and moving forward, you're ahead of the curve. I think that's definitely like something that's underrated, you know.
Yeah, I agree because we have that time to really develop like our sense of like what we're passionate about, and what are our future goals, like moving towards that and stuff, and being in straight into school, in a way like it's kind of like going through high school again, where like you're kind of just moving a little blind.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like community college is pretty underrated. People should really like accept and go there. And I'm not saying that 4-year colleges are bad. But community college isn't as bad as you think it is. It's not embarrassing to go. It's actually really helpful. So
Yeah. Dang, that's awesome. That's beautiful to hear. Well, Jordan, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the podcast. I mean, I'd like to thank you again for hopping on the podcast as well and joining us today. If anything within this podcast resonated with you in any way, feel free to share this across all social media platforms and tag at Detour Podcast. And if you ever want to support Jordan's, boba ventures in the future, that's up and coming, just wait on that. But again, thank you guys for your continuous love and support. I'm your host, Gary Fan, and I'll see you guys next episode. Peace.